Number one, we have the grand staircase, and this long staircase leads us to the bottom floor of this palace.
The palace here at Knossos attracts hundreds of thousands of visitors each year. People drawn by the fascination of an ancient civilization that Sir Arthur Evans began to uncover at the turn of the century. It was he who first coined the name Minoan, after the legendary King Minos, whose shadowy existence had always been associated with Crete. And it's here, on the grand staircase of the palace, that one begins to appreciate something of the quality of the people who built this vast labyrinth of 1,500 rooms or more. This monumental palace complex, with its huge central courtyard, its workshops, treasury, shrines, and storehouses, was the center of royal power in Minoan times and dates from about 2000 BC. Professor Peter Warren of Bristol University is a specialist in Minoan studies, and he's brought me right down here into the royal apartments, where we can get some impression of the way these sophisticated people lived.
Well, we've come down 4 flights of the staircase and the 2 landing flights, and we're here at the bottom now in the great hall of the colonnades, which leads through to the king's room. We're, in fact, standing in a light well, one of the specific features of Minoan architecture. You can see the fine, enormous limestone blocks with the Minoan engraved signs on them. The trident sign is particularly clear there, and then on another lower block. But because of the angle of the sun and the placing of these light wells, light is able to be well distributed to these lower rooms, and of course also to give protection against the heat of summer and the scorching winds and the quite cold weather that we have in Crete in the winter.
We've got a choice of exits here. We can go through that door over there, or through this one on our left. Now, which one leads us through into the Queen's chamber?
Well, we can explore in this dark and labyrinthine passage here. One feels as it was almost deliberately designed not to be so easy of access, which will bring us through to the Queen's chamber and the Queen's bathroom on this side, down through this very dark and original passage. There you see the beam slot for a beam of wood, and this was a very useful technique in Minoan architecture to give some protection against earthquake, not to make the wall entirely rigid of stone, but to include wooden features to give it some play, some flexibility in the time of severe earthquakes, which we get many here at Knossos.
Well, now, we've done a couple of turns, and we've come into a dark passage that's leading us into a room that's quite brightly lit once again. Is that one of those light wells just there on our right?
Yes, it is, and it's an excellent example in this early morning light, because you see, although we're quite far down here, how well lit this area is, and with such deep, thick walls, it's necessary to have some such means of introducing light into this room. And you see, this really is quite well lit here. This is the Queen's bathroom. The bath was almost certainly located over in that corner on the raised stand, rather like the famous bath in the palace of Nestor at Pylos, which was found in situ, the actual bath. Here there was a bath in the adjoining room, in the Queen's room, and it may originally have been here. And then just to one side is this remarkable toilet faced with these gypsum slabs, and really every convenience which was not achieved again at least until Roman times in Crete, with the drainage system taking it away underneath.
The plumbing, as Evans found during the reconstruction of large areas of Knossos, was as sophisticated as the palace design and construction. But these ancient people were also brilliant in the way they worked in metal, pottery, and precious stones. Examples of their work found here at Knossos and other palace sites are superb in their design and workmanship. These excavations also reveal wall paintings of outstanding quality, like the full-size portrait of the priest king, the so-called Parisian ladies who look so modern in their hairstyles of thousands of years ago. And then there's the fresco in the east wing, showing acrobats seizing the horns of a sacred bull and vaulting over its back. Evans spent half a lifetime and over £1 million of his own money excavating and reconstructing Knossos in his search for the identity of these ancient people. But in spite of this effort, and almost 80 years' investigation by scholars from all over the world, fundamental questions remain unanswered, and on Crete today, archaeologists continue the search for a fuller understanding of this civilization. We've come up a winding road into the mountains now, through vineyards and olive groves to Archanis, and it's here that Professor Yanis Zakalarakis from Athens is excavating a temple on a mountain that was supposed to be sacred to the Minoans. This temple is a first in Minoan archaeology. It's got 3 separate rooms and dates from the 18th century BC, each room perhaps for a different god. I know, Professor, that when you discovered this site, you thought you had a royal temple here, but what exactly makes you think that?
It's difficult to tell now, because the dig is not finished, but the orientation of that building is exactly the orientation of the palaces, and only of the palaces, not of the different houses we find in Crete. And possibly that means also something in connection with a royal cult.
You were saying that there might have been 3 different gods worshipped in this one temple. What's the evidence that's led you to that suggestion?
Because in every single chamber we excavated till now, and I'm speaking about the central chamber and the east chamber, has his own cult objects. Nothing of the same kind has been found in both of them. Special things, special altars, special kinds of vases. Only in the central chamber we find traces of what I think is a cult image, a cult statue, clay feet of life size.
Interesting that it was just the feet, and you say they were life-sized.
Yes, exactly.
What happened to the rest of it?
We don't know, but we can suppose. Maybe the rest of it would be entirely of wood. Maybe they were of clay, only the hands, the feet, and the face.
It must have been very exciting to have come across this, because previously the only Minoan statuary that's been found is in miniature form, figurines, and...
Exactly.
Do you suppose the fact that it was made of wood had any special significance?
Yes, certainly, because the Minoans thought that special trees, they had sacral significance, and maybe that was made by a special tree. And we know from the later Greek religion that the most important old statues, the so-called xoana, they were made only by trees, and they have only feet or the face or the hands made from other material.
We're in one of the chambers now, the chamber on the end of this temple complex, and you've half excavated it, and it's rather a good time to be here because much of the material is still in situ, and we're squatting down here in front of several huge storage vases. Most of them have been cracked and some quite badly damaged, but I wonder what you found inside them.
Nothing but earth, but of course in the antiquity, in the Minoan times, they were full of offerings, not only liquids but other offerings. We know from the mentions from Homer that even the clothes, they have been put into big jars, like these jars. We hope that these jars bear also inscriptions, or rather signs, like the other signs we find in the central chamber. That means pithoi inscribed with signs in linear A script.
How important is that?
It's of course very important, because not every pithos found in every house has been inscribed, because the owner knows exactly what puts in. But here, in such an important sanctuary, was a need to be inventarized everything.
Of course, the problem is that scholars and archaeologists can't actually decipher what this linear A script tells us.
No, unfortunately, we don't know. We hope to find also here some clay figures, human or animal idols, to know exactly what a kind of divinity has been worshipped here.
This excavation, accompanied by thousands of cicadas in the pine trees around us, is taking place at Knossos in the grounds of the Villa Ariadne, the comfortable headquarters which Evans built for himself while he was excavating here. The villa and the whole of the Knossos site, which Evans acquired at the turn of the century, is now owned by the Greek government. But the old Evans estate also has on it a stratigraphical museum, which today is bursting at the seams with millions of pieces of pottery excavated here since the early 1900s. And it's an extension to the museum, so badly needed to house the results of future excavations, that's caused Professor Peter Warren to start exploring the proposed building site. We're just up the hill from the palace, but when Professor Warren opened up his first trench last season, no one had any idea of what might lie underneath here. Well, what he's found is part of the city surrounding the palace, and among many other features representing several periods, he's got here a section of a Minoan paved road with two substantially built houses on either side, and they date from about 1400 BC. As we walk through this courtyard, Peter, I wonder if we're in an ordinary Minoan house or one that had some special relationship with the palace.
Well, as far as we can tell, the house, fine though the masonry is of the ordinary domestic type. It's part of the Minoan town extending up on this slope. But it may also have had a particular function in that adjacent to it here in the courtyard, we've found two very interesting kilns. And this is the older one. They're of a type with a firing chamber in the front and three long channels drawing away off towards the north, plastered channels.
The firing chamber is this round excavated hole in front of it.
Yes, and in the later of the two kilns, just here, this was full of wood ash, the remains of the last firing, the material used. But the channels lead away to the north, sloping upwards, and drew the heat to bring it up at the back where the remains of the plaster pipe is preserved there, and to fire whatever was laid over them, presumably pottery. They seem to be pottery kilns when we compare them with the evidence of two recently discovered kilns at Agia Triada and the Palace of Zakros, and take these all together. It looks as though we have a specific and very interesting type of pottery kiln. The newer kiln, just to the west here, is a much better and finer specimen. It has 5 great channels leading away, and obviously could have fired quite substantial quantities of pottery. The main evidence from it, though, is the well-preserved stone vault right underneath that Roman foundation wall, possibly as late as the 4th century AD, which has come down almost to the top of the vault of the kiln chamber. So we have that very well preserved, the firing chamber there, and you see the neat ends of the stones, where very carefully chosen rounded stones to lead the heat away directly along the channels.
We can cross the street here and move into another house, and this is, of course, where the pottery was found, and I can see just down in that corner there some more pottery is emerging, and I wonder if perhaps you're due to find another remarkable cache of Minoan pottery.
Well, we're very much hoping for it, but of course it's a little early to say yet, because what we seem to have here is possibly one vessel or two. It's being supervised by Kay Borland, and she's cleaning away. Is that spirals you see there, Kay, that are just beginning to emerge on the lip of the vessel?
Towards the top here. Should be black spirals, there's black bands on the base.
What sort of a pot do you think it is?
Well, it could be just a cooking vessel, it could be... It's decorated, so it probably isn't. We're not even sure if it's one pot or two, it's been so smashed up.
I suppose, in fact, there could be anything under there.